What is going on, my YouTube friends? Do I have quite an episode today here for you? We've seen Bitcoin absolutely crash to levels we haven't seen in 6 months, right? Which is pretty wild. So after Trump and his administration announced the tariffs, we saw Bitcoin at these prices, right? And MicroStrategy, we actually haven't seen MSTR prices this low in over a year, right? Also, looks like MSTR has a decent chance. I don't know what the probability. If you ask AI, the probability is like less than 30%. But there's a chance that MSTR could get excommunicated, exiled from the queues, from the NASDAQ, right? So these are kind of the ideas that I want to talk about today. So before I get into it, if you are interested in crypto, Bitcoin, AI, MSTR, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. We talk about this every single day. Try to bring you breaking news as well as my thoughts and opinions on what I think is going to happen with the market and how everything is going to transpire. So yeah, guys, definitely consider subscribing. Also, if you're finding any value in this content, please don't, if you don't mind, like the video because it promotes it. And also, let me know what your Bitcoin price targets are by the end of the year after this crash, right? Are we going to go back to all-time highs by the end of the year, or are we going to sit here at 80K forever, right? So yeah, let me know what your price targets are for Bitcoin. Okay, so first off, Bitcoin is now, like, the last time I checked, like 82,000, right? So for the people that aren't invested in Bitcoin, that's great for you, especially if you're interested but not invested, because now you can buy this massive dip, right? I mean, every bullish thesis surrounding Bitcoin hasn't changed, right? There's still Bitcoin bills in Congress being talked about right now, right? Talking about potentially in the Bitcoin Act, you can look this up for yourself, potentially the United States of America buying 1 million Bitcoin over the next 5 years, right? And the Trump administration continues to just reiterate their interest in making the United States the crypto / Bitcoin capital of the world, right? And it's actually not just the administration either. There's various members of Congress that are pushing this as well. So it's bipartisan, and it could potentially put quite a large dent in the overall debt that the United States of America has right now, if played correctly, right? So basically, if you are interested in Bitcoin, I mean, there hasn't been a better chance to buy Bitcoin in the last 6 months, right? And there's been a lot of people, a lot of institutions, high net worth individuals, and institutions with a lot of money have been buying at much higher prices than these just in the past few weeks and months, right? So you're actually getting a significant discount compared to what you could consider people with very, very high IQs and very, very high net worths have been paying. So, I mean, basically a Bitcoin sale. That's the way I look at it, right? As a Bitcoin bull, I think it's a big sale. So then you see MSTR price, right? MSTR price last time I looked this morning was around $175 per share, around a $50 billion market cap. So still very much a large cap, a $50 billion market cap. Their average purchase price of all of their Bitcoin is around $77,000, right? So we're only a little bit above that number at this point. Now the Bitcoin's down to like 82,000. That being said, I would have expected to see, like MicroStrategy down even further than it is. With Bitcoin at 80, 82, I figured I would have seen MSTR this morning at 150, 140, 130, something wild, right? But we're seeing some capitulation, I think, in Bitcoin, as well as some capitulation in MSTR stock. So that's good. That means that, hopefully we don't see further declines. But if we do, and you've got money in other assets, the Mag 7, money in a savings account that you got extra, whatever you want, like if you have extra money and you are interested in buying Bitcoin or MSTR, I mean, like I said, there hasn't been better times to buy in recent, in the recent past. So that being said, also MicroStrategy came out on their X account yesterday and said, hey, even at these prices, we still have 71 years worth of dividends, right? In our Bitcoin bank. So for all the haters and all the people spreading FUD, the Peter Schiffs of the world, the Jason Calacanis's of the world, it's like, and like I said before, I do like Jason Calacanis. I think he's a funny guy, and I watch the Elon podcast. I like him a lot, but I disagree with him wholeheartedly on MSTR stock. there's a lot of FUD going around right now, and it's so similar to me of what happened to Tesla, like earlier this year actually, when they were burning Teslas to the ground. Tesla stock fell to like low 200s, and then look what happened. 4, 5, 6 months later, it more than doubled, right? So it's like sentiment changes quickly, and when bad things are happening, it's like all of the people come out of the woodworks to let you know about it, right? The bears on this channel, some of my friends, they'll give me crap, and then you'll also just see like all sorts of people on X and all sorts of people on social media just saying, "Oh, I was right. Oh, I was right." And I thought about it today on my way to work this morning, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of like if you were to give a few pieces of, let's say you had 5 pieces of cheese to like your pet mice, right? And then over time you keep giving them more cheese and more cheese and more cheese, right? So now they have, let's say, 7 or 8 pieces of cheese, okay? And then they see they're in a good mood, everything's good, but then like as soon as you take one piece of cheese away, or let alone 2 or 3, for the short term, and they don't know what's going on, oh, they're going to freak out. And so that's where we're at. A couple pieces of cheese have been removed from the pet mice, and they're freaking out over it. That's where we're at, So it's like, is the cheese going to come back? Probably, but it's like right now, at this very moment in time, on November 19th or 20th, whatever, 21st, on November 21st, we lost some cheese. We all need to talk about it. We all need to freak out about the lost cheese. That's how I feel, So I find it funny. I find that analogy to be funny. Hopefully you guys too do also. So the last piece of news, which is a big deal, but also I just want to tell you guys that I don't think it's a huge deal, is the NASDAQ thing, the QQQ, right? So basically, the NASDAQ is supposed to be full of technology companies, right? So the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Teslas, the Netflixes of the world, right? And last year, around this time, MicroStrategy was added to the QQQ. Whether that was a right decision or a wrong decision, it is what it is. They were added, right? But I will say that when they were added, there was basically no uptake. It's not like when Coinbase was added to the S&P 500, or when Tesla was added to the S&P 500, or when Palantir was added to the S&P 500, right? Where you saw immediate spikes, where everyone was like, okay, well, the S&P 500 is a gigantic deal. The NASDAQ, it's nothing to scoff at, right? It is definitely the Cadillac of exchanges, where it's got all these gigantic large cap companies that are, changing and innovating the world, and it's a big deal. But at the same time, I don't know very many people or like very many funds that you can go put your retirement account in the Qs, right? But a lot of people put their retirement account in the S&P 500, right? And that is actually still on the table. When MSTR reports their earnings next, if Bitcoin hasn't went up a lot, they're probably gonna have to report a loss. So maybe that'll derail their trajectory to get into the S&P 500. But I still do believe they'll definitely be in the S&P 500 long term. But yeah, the Qs, it's kind of like, should they be there in the first place? Because they are definitely a financial company. They've got a software element to their business, but like they're not really a technology company. You know what I mean? And that's why they were put in there, because they were basically classified as a technology company instead of a financial company. You don't see Goldman Sachs or Bank of America, or Citibank or U.S. Bank or anything like that. Capital One, Visa, MasterCard. You don't see these types of companies, these financial companies, in the NASDAQ. So in my personal humble opinion from a guy on YouTube, like, I don't really care all that much whether it's in the Qs or not. Obviously I'd rather be in the Qs because they're going to get some inflows when people buy the Qs, right? You're going to get some inflows into MicroStrategy. But if not, I don't think it's that big of a deal. JP Morgan's warning about it a lot. At the same time, like, JP Morgan just hyped up Bitcoin. They're saying that Bitcoin's going to go to 170 to 200K within the next 6 to 12 months, right? So it's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of seems like JP Morgan's trying to throw some FUD on MicroStrategy, or just some enlightenment, saying, hey, the decision's going to be made like January 15th next year as to whether MicroStrategy stays in the Qs or whether it gets exiled, right? But they've even basically talked about how, like, it's basically a couple $1 billion worth of outflows at the max that would happen from that. And we've seen like $20 billion in outflows from MSTR just in the past like 2 weeks. So yeah, if they get pushed out from the Qs, I'm sure it'll cause like some more short-term FUD. A lot of people saying, oh, MSTR is trash or it's a Ponzi scheme or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, we know, if you watch this channel, you know what the big point about MSTR is. The big deal is that they own 650,000 Bitcoin, right? And it is a very volatile asset, but it's also an asset that cannot be inflated. It's an asset that all sorts of institutions, governments, high net worth individuals, and companies are dying to buy, right? And it's like, these are the times when it's hard to make these videos, right? Where it's actually like, people are going to, the bears come out of hibernation. They're like, oh, I was right. I was right. I was right. But at the same time, it's like, this is a moment in time, guys. That's the most important thing I can stress to you guys. It is a moment in time for Bitcoin. It's a moment in time for the SPY, for the S&P 500. It's down a lot too right now. Tesla's down. Amazon's down. Palantir's like 155. All these crazy good investments that are going to do well over the long term, right? They're going to do just fine. They're going to do great, right? But in the short term, things change, right? Things can be volatile. So just what you should take from this video, guys, is that know what you own, right? MSTR and Bitcoin. If you believe in Bitcoin, it's almost impossible not to believe in leveraged Bitcoin, right? As long as the leveraged Bitcoin isn't over leveraged, right? But I would say MSTR is far from over leveraged when they have 71 years worth of dividend payments, when they're leveraged 1.1x. They're not like some Lehman Brothers where they've got 3 times the amount of assets as their net worth is truly, they're leveraged like 10%, right? So, it's a tough time to be an MSTR shareholder. It's a tough time to be in Bitcoin at all, right? When you see gigantic decreases in the Bitcoin price just in the past week or two, right? But like I said, just remember what you got, remember what you own, and why you own it. So guys, with that, thanks for watching. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't yet. And let me know, especially now, what your Bitcoin price targets are by the end of the year. Is it going to stay at 80, 82, or is it going to skyrocket up to all-time highs again? So guys, thank you for watching.